Welcome to the deep dive tutorial video on the new Roll Appraiser tool, one of the big new features of Lite.gg patch 2.0. I'm afpac, creator of Lite.gg, here to walk you through some of the finer points of how this feature works, what the intention is, and hopefully answer some of your questions. If you don't have time for a deep dive, check out the patch 2.0 rundown, which sums up everything that's changed in about 3 minutes. So what is the Roll Appraiser? Ever since adding the perk suggestions and my roles feature to item detail pages, one of the most commonly requested features has been the ability to see all of your roles in one place instead of having to go to each item one at a time. The Roll Appraiser is my stab at making that a reality. So let's get into it. This is where you land when you first pull up the Roll Appraiser. Let's start by looking at the list of weapon types on the left. You can click this right arrow at the upper right to expand the list out if you're not sure what the weapon type is just by looking at its icon, and clicking toggle all will either collapse or expand the main list. Clicking on any of the weapon icons will make the main list jump down to bring that weapon type into focus, and underneath each weapon type there are 4 numbers, each with different colors. The first number is the total number of weapons of that type that match your current filters. Second, with the red background, are the weapons of that type that have been identified as having a solid PvP role. The third number shows a similar thing for PvE roles, and the fourth number, with the gold background, shows how many god rolls you have of that type. Note that items that are quote-unquote god rolls are not included in PvE or PvP counts. They fall into their own category exclusively. And again, these categorizations are based on the same perk recommendations that show up on item detail pages, curated by well-respected community contributors, and you can see those recommendations on the individual roles in the center of the tool as well. So now let's fiddle around with the filters a bit to illustrate how the numbers on the left update depending on what you've got set up on the right. There's a whole bunch of filtering options in here, but to start, let's just say we only want to see randomly rolled legendary weapons. If you watch, you can see the total count of rolls on the far left says 179, but once I apply my filters, the total drops to 87. The filters list is also a bit of a legend for what some of the icons in the roll squares in the center mean. The trophy indicates a god roll, the medal indicates you have the weapon masterworked, and so on. Let's take a look at one of these rolls now to dig into the info being presented. Looking at this ringing nail, the basics of what's going on here are hopefully pretty straightforward. The perks with the gold border around them are the ones that you actually have equipped, with any community recommendations showing up with a background glow and icon in the upper right if appropriate. Underneath the item name are a bunch of labels that, hopefully once people get used to them, will be handy for being able to quickly see the attributes of their roles. Let's start at the end of the list and work our way backwards here, as the ones at the end should be things we're all used to. This weapon uses primary ammo, does solar damage, and is randomly rolled, which helps show that our filter is working. From there, you can see that this weapon has a solid PvP roll by this first label, but also has the perks question mark label, which shows up when you're using a non-community recommended perk despite having one available on the weapon. Next, you can see by the level up icon that this weapon could potentially get a better grade by changing its perks around. Now let's dig into this particular role further by clicking on it. Clicking on any role brings up the full inspector just for that weapon. You can see the descriptions on the labels expand out since we have a little bit more real estate here, and down below you can see what the actual stats on the weapon are given your current perk selection. So now that we can see a little better, the perks label is clearly showing up because in column 1 we're using Satu Precision Lens instead of the recommended perk Marin RDS. We can swap to that perk and see the stats update live down below, giving us a lot more handling at a cost of a little bit of range. Even with that selection, however, we still aren't using the most popular perks available to us on this weapon. By clicking Select Most Popular Perks, the UI will pick those perks for you and again give you a live preview of what the stats look like and what the grade for the weapon would be with those choices. I should note here that Bungie doesn't allow us to automatically swap perks around using the API, so this is really just all theory crafting, but it's still a handy way of being able to look at your roles and compare them to what other people in the community might do with the same weapon. So now, just to put a bow on all the things that you can do on this screen, you can click the square upright arrow icon to bring up the full item detail page for this weapon. And you can also click the lock icon to lock or unlock the weapon in the game. The item count and arrows at the top are there to give you easy access to slide through your current list as it is filtered without having to hop in and out of the inspector window. Clicking the single arrows will move one weapon in either direction. The double arrows will take you to the next weapon type. Finally, the Find Similar Rolls button is useful if you have a roll that you love and want to find other weapons that can roll with a similar setup. Clicking on that button will summon up the God Roll Finder, preloaded with the perks from your roll. You can modify those perks however you like, see all the possible rolls, or even go back to the list of your rolls that match your criteria and export that list back to the Roll Appraiser. The two tools are very tightly integrated, and I think being able to hop easily between them is one of the most exciting parts of both. That's more or less it. I'm sure I've missed some of the smaller details, but hopefully this leads you enough in the right direction that you can start to dig into the Roll Appraiser and theory craft what weapons with what combinations of perks might be worth giving a try. If you have any questions, feel free to send them to me on Discord, Twitter, or leave them in the comments below. Thanks as always for supporting the site, and be sure to like and subscribe to stay up to date on all of the newest Light.gg features.